Today's guest is Jeremie Kubicek. Now, Jeremie is the founder and chief executive of Giant Worldwide. Giant, and Jeremie will explain a bit more in the interview, but it is a platform, a technology platform aimed at supporting consultants and coaches who work with leadership teams around the globe. Very, very interesting concept and very innovative in the approach it's taking. We're focusing today primarily on one of the programs and also a book that Jeremie and his co-author Steve Cochran have written on the Five Voices. Now, the Five Voices is really to try and help teams communicate effectively with each other and to understand the different voices. And I said I will let Jeremie explain what they are. But the very much the premise is that that you've got within an organization, you've got people who are more dominant than others, and some voices get lost. And what those voices who get lost, they have something to offer, something to bring, but they very often don't get heard in the noise from the noisier voices that exist. And that's true right across the globe. It's not kind of a particular country, particular culture, particular industry. It's just right across the globe. And we've all witnessed that. But it really, Jeremie talks about how it really helps organizations to communicate more effectively, because one of the big challenges in industry today is that, we're managing the business and we're managing change simultaneously. And part of managing change effectively is bringing people with us. And the Five Voices is a really fantastic tool to help organizations to communicate effectively, to bring everybody with them on the journey to actually realize the objectives. So I encourage you to sit back and listen to the very interesting Jeremie Kubicek. Jeremie, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. It's a real honor to have you here. I'm delighted to see you looking well.
Thank you, John. I always like being with you. I don't know, it's the accent that you have. It lures me in. And then you told me that you're actually just from Ohio, that it's a fake accent. And no.
Don't tell everybody my secrets, for God's sake. Maybe you might give us a bit of background, because you're the founder, CEO of Giant, and just to explain what Giant is, your journey to that, and what the purpose of Giant.
Yeah, so I've been in leadership development space for years. I have started 20-something companies, 28 actually, to be precise. And so I'm an entrepreneur. I start things, but my whole life has always been around people. When you think about businesses, you think there's strategy, business model, capital, the funding, and there's people. And the people always usually screw up the strategy and the funding. And so I spent most of my time in private equity and building these companies, realizing that I needed to focus on people. So we bought John Maxwell's assets. We used to partner with Pat Lencioni and Henry Cloud and all these great thought leaders. But I got to a point when I realized that most of the leader development was a 20th century model. Bring people into a seminar and sell them a book. And that the 21st century learning style is completely different. And it's visual. It's these little devices. It's streaming and watching and consuming. So visual became so much more important. And so that's what we did. We basically built tools that are visual, that create common language that a 13-year-old could use, because a 13-year-old can't explain Harvard, or a person can't explain it to a 13-year-old. And so therefore, a lot of great leadership jargon doesn't scale inside organizations. And we focused on building content that scales for everyone to be able to use, large, small, at home, all of those. And that's really what Giant is. We basically create tools and concepts and apps and all types of technology for coaches and consultants to use inside companies. And inside those companies, it scales.
Yeah. I to declare quite openly, I am part of Giant. I'm a member there. I was you and I have met before. You've been on the podcast before, which is great. But what I was attracted to this time round was I'd been introduced to the concept of the five voices. Right. And I want to just kind of spend some time on this podcast just talking about that, Jeremie, if you don't mind, because I know that, Giant, you've got a huge amount of content and a huge amount of offers, but I want to really focus in on the five voices. And I mean, you have yourself and Steve Cockram have written the book on the five voices, and you have that entire program. But the premise of the five voices, if I'm quoting you correctly, is that, everyone speaks, but not everyone is heard. You might just elaborate on that and what you actually mean by that.
And if you're listening to this, let me ask you a question. Have you ever sat in a boardroom or in a conference room with a team of people, and there's one or two people who suck out all of the oxygen because their voice is so loud, either their title is big or their voice is loud, and nobody else gets to play? And they may say something like this: hey, listen, best idea wins. I'll go first, right? And then that person goes first and no one else gets to play. And it's the idea that there are personalities and wirings of people that often get overlooked. And so we basically just dissected all of the personality dynamics and put them into percentages to help you understand where the percentages are and how do you actually learn to value the voice of other people.
Mm. And so you talk about the five voices. Explain the five voices. If you want to use, I mean, you know what my five voices are, because I've done the assessment. So it's pioneer, guardian, creative, connector, and nurturer. So just taking that as an example, maybe that helps to explain what the five voices are.
Well, so let's explain. So there's 16 different variations of personality. And where this came from was Jungian typology, Carl Jung, and we dissected that, which is where Myers-Briggs came from. And we took and created a formula that scales so much easier than, say, INTJ, ENFP. It's hard to explain. No one understands what that means. And then they try to remember, and they're like, yeah, I'm an ENTTFP. They can't remember it. But they can remember connector. They can remember nurturer. So the five voices are there's a nurturer, there's a creative, there's a guardian, there's a connector, and a pioneer. So when you take those five, those are general categories of people, but we're actually different variations. There's a connector creative. There might be a pioneer guardian or a pioneer creative. So there's different variations of it. But what we've done is we've created at least five. If you understand your core fundamental voice, you can understand so much more about yourself and about those that you're on the other side of the table from. And that was our goal. Our goal was this, John: we want everybody to play, not just the people who are in the room that heard the expert but can't explain it to someone else. We want parents to know it for their kids. We want teams to know it. We want companies and organizations to be able to know it. So that's why Google uses Giant, the five voices, because everyone plays. That's why we train the U.S. Air Force on the five voices, because big organizations are using it because it's common language that everyone can get.
Yeah. One of the things that I really loved about it, I mean, lots of things I really loved about it, because, I mean, as I said to you before, I found it quite interesting to actually do my own profile, because you see, we're all a bit, talk about bias. We're all a bit biased about ourselves and how we want to see ourselves as opposed to how we are and how we turn up. But one of the things that I really like about it as well is that very often with, kind of personality tests and that they put people in boxes, right? That, you're blue or you're green or whatever you might be, or INTJ or whatever it might be. And what I like about the five voices is that, okay, there's one dominant, but we are all a combination of every single one of them.
It's so helpful because, you and I mean, John, you've had experiences, I've had experiences, we've been nurtured, we've had upbringings, we've had bosses. So you have nature, you have nurture, and you have choice. Well, nature is who you were born. Some are born as extroverts. Some are introverts. That's true. It's amazing, the studies on that every year. Some are feelers, some are thinkers, some are more organized, some are more spontaneous. There's a natural order that we're born into. Well, but you take that nature, then you have something called nurture. It's your upbringing. It means that you and I have been influenced by our parents. We've been influenced by where we live. We've been influenced by our perspective. We've been influenced by bosses. We've also been influenced by the choices that we made. Like I moved to Russia in 1993 and started three companies. Well, that changed my entire view of the world and perspective. So where does that fit in my behavior? Well, the nature is how I was born. So an example, I'm a connector, creative pioneer. That means I'm a future thinker, ideation. I love to relate to people and make networks, but I'm an extrovert, big time. But I grew up with my dad on a farm as an only child, as an introvert. He's an introvert. I was in a tractor cab at 13 years old. I was driving tractors with no radio for 8 hours at a time. So what does a connector extrovert do? You learn how to think. You learn how to process. So that nurtured upbringing mashed up with my nature of an extrovert futurist, and it gave me a more well-rounded. So, what happens in a lot of cases is people take personality tests, but they're taking them based on who they think they should be. They're taking them on who they're playing on TV. And what we want to do with the 5 voices, at least figure out, are you really a pioneer, or do you think you should be a pioneer? And that was the case for me when I was writing the book. I'm a pioneer connector for sure. And as I was writing the book, I realized I'm actually a connector, creative pioneer who plays a pioneer mostly in my day job.
Yeah.
So understanding that gave me just so many insights of what it's like to be on the other side of me.
Yeah. And of course, also one of the things that you talk about is kind of the shadow side of kind of, when you're pushing it too hard. That I found to be very, very revealing. And I certainly also found that I could look back and kind of identify situations where, yeah, I've done that. Right. And, and it's not your finest moment, but I think it's also helpful to understand that when somebody behaves like that, it might not necessarily be what their intention is. It's just something that is part of what makes them up.
That's right. And when you know yourself, you can lead yourself, right? So the beauty of what you just said was, I know you and I, we share, you have your guardian and your nurturer are lower. Is that right?
Yeah. No, I'm pioneer guardian, and my nurture and connector are lower. Yeah.
Nurture and connector are lower. Okay. But we share nurture are lower. Your nurture is 5th, my nurture is 4th. But people think because I'm a connector, they think that I would be a strong nurturer. Well, the difference is nurturers actually care about an individual person. So it sounds funny. If you asked me to spend time with an Aunt Edna, I'm like, oh no, like with your Aunt Edna, like I have to spend time with her. That would be hard for me, but I would love to solve issues for all of the Aunt Ednas in the world. Yeah. If I can create something that helps all of them, I'm in. But I don't want to just go spend time with one Aunt Edna. Yeah. And that sounds really, really callous. It's just true. It's just how I'm wired. But I can start to realize that I'm not very good at nurturing. So I can actually work on it a little bit and at least be aware of it and at least begin to value the other voice. Yeah. So like my nemesis voice is a guardian. And my wife happens to be a guardian. So opposites attract, right? And so that is happening. Well, I have to really, really, really learn how to speak her language. So if you really want to understand the 5 voices, we're really saying there are 5 different languages. There are 5 voices that you're speaking to. And when you're speaking their voice, you need to learn the language of guardian. You need to learn the language of connector or nurturer or pioneer or creative. And when you speak it, they'll respond to it. But if you only speak your language, if you're a pioneer and you only speak pioneer, you're going to miss all of those other people and they're going to miss you.
Yeah. So when you look at a leadership team, I mean, the work that I do, Jeremy, as you know, is primarily with senior leadership teams. And I mean, I could kind of know the answer, but I just want to hear what you say. You know, why and when should a leadership team invest in the Five Voices program?
Well, so the first is why. Let's think about this for a second. It's simple when you start thinking about, if you know who you're leading, you can lead them more effectively. If you treat everyone exactly the same, you won't have the same results. So the analogy I like to use is plants. Let's say you went to the plant store and you got 5 plants, but they're all different. A ficus needs a lot more water. A cactus, not so much. Put a cactus up in the window and a little bit of water, it's fine. Ficus needs a lot of water. You got to be careful of how much sun it gets. So understanding, if you want a competitive advantage, you learn the 5 voices. It's easy to learn. It's easy to see how other people are acting. Then you learn how to water them. They need way more water. They need more sunlight. So they need more support. They need more challenge. You need to position them differently. So if I am a leader and I want my teams to thrive, then I need to know, how many guardians do I have? How many nurtures do I have? It also takes away from conflict. 73% of the population are nurturers and guardians. That means they're present oriented. Most leaders, the majority, there's over misrepresentation of future voices. Well, the connectors, the creatives, and the pioneers are all future thinkers. So if you want to know where clashes come from, it's the future and present voices constantly clashing. And the future voices not knowing how to communicate to the present voices, and the present voices put their foot on the brake because they think that the future voices are going too fast, too far. Yeah. And all we want them to do is take their foot off the brake. Well, you need to know who you're speaking with so that you can lead them in the right area. Yeah. So as fast as you possibly can, take the 5 voices. And I am biased. I'm just telling you it works. Because if you know it, you can lead them more effectively.
Yeah. One of the things that I found really helpful, because somebody that I work quite a bit, that I work quite closely with, who is, having done it, is creative, right? And I find that I tend to get frustrated with the creative, right? But one of the things that you talk about in the 5 voices is that when the creative starts talking, it's very rarely the first thing that they say is actually the point that they're trying to make, that you've got to work to kind of draw it out. But when you draw the creative out, then there's gold when you actually do it. And I found that because I would get naturally frustrated because of Pioneer Guardian, right? I would shut down the creative. And by doing the 5 voices, helped me to be a bit more patient to draw it out, and then could really see the goal. So, and then instead flipping from being really frustrated to actually getting huge benefit. So that's from a personal experience.
That's right. Well, and so the natural tendency of a pioneer is to push. I see the mountain, let's take the mountain, let's go. Push, 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 push. So they typically have the solutions, they've already thought about it. Well, the creative is they ponder, they have ideas, they have this big blueprint above them in their head. So, and they're idealists and they're purists. And so they want it to be right. And so then they're kind of contemplating out loud. But if they don't think that you're for them, it's like playing cards. They'll hold their cards, they'll pull them back and they won't share with you. But if you do what you did and pull and learn how to draw out, then they'll get better and better at communicating because you're helping them get better at communicating versus rolling your eyes, stifling them, what have you. And truly, the creatives see the future more than anyone else. They see way past everyone else. But the problem is they see it, and sometimes it could be pain issues or it can be gain, but they don't have necessarily a depth perception of when it's going to happen. So it gets discredited a lot when it's actually, there is gold in there. You just have to sift through it, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. And when a team does the 5 voices, and how in an organization, okay, typically you say okay, say the leadership team does the 5 voices and they begin to understand it, but I mean the rest of the organization, hasn't actually done the five voices. What sort of cascade effect has with the leadership team having done it, even if the other teams haven't done it? I know in an ideal world, you want everyone to do it, but.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I'm actually in the client's office right now. This is a medical facility, and the doctor has just gone through it, and he's the lead doctor of this group, and it's a scientific research lab, and he's found out his guardian nurturer tendency in nature, and he's an introvert, and it's quiet. He's just telling me, he's like, oh my goodness, it's changed. So what happens a lot of times is people, they take it personally, then they realize, I wonder what my wife is, or my husband, or my kids are, and they think about that, and then they start going, oh, we need the team to go through it. So that's where they're at next. The team is going through it next. Then in time, then it does naturally go to the teams, because you think about this, companies are a culmination of teams, and a team is either spinning or it's not spinning. And it's all predicated on the health of the team leader. Well, there's this effect, the golden rule. I think we've all heard it. Do unto others as you would want done. Well, I don't need a hug. Why do you need a hug? I didn't get training. Why do you need training? I mean, it misinterpreted. The golden rule can be kind of funny. The platinum rule, do unto others as they would want done to themselves. So when a team leader gets turned on to it to go, you know what? These people are compliant, they're not engaged. If I know them and they know that I know them and I'm patient with them and help them, they'll want to work with me, not have to work with me. So we have seen team after team after team get turned on and all of a sudden become engaged, all because of the communication of the five voices and the relational trust that it builds. So it is a cascade effect. The other beautiful part about the tools and the voices is it's common language, and everyone can understand the language, and everyone can use the language. So much so that we have clients who are now understanding their sales and marketing. They're using the five voices to understand who their clients are and who their prospects are, and they're having different presentations. Because if I know I'm speaking to a guardian, he's the decision maker, or she, I'm going to give a lot more detail. I'm going to be factual. I'm going to make it logical. I'm going to go A, then B, then C, then D. But if I'm speaking to a connector, it's going to be rah-rah. It's going to be, wouldn't it be cool if, and we think this, and it's going to be different levels.
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty. The five voices it's not just a personality assessment. It's a communication system. And once you put it in the water stream, it doesn't override any of your own language or your own values or vision. It fits perfectly in it because it gives the language to give grace and then hold people accountable, support, and challenge inside teams.
Yeah. One of the things that really strikes me about it is that, if you take any senior leadership team, any leadership team, it doesn't really matter what industry or what stage they're at in the evolution, but they're all managing change of one sort or another, right? And what gets in the way of change is actually lack of clarity, lack of communication, lack of flow, lack of information, lack of understanding, lack of bringing people along at the same pace. And to me, I just kind of see the five voices as being that kind of perfect model that actually helps to actually communicate the change that we're going through and bringing everybody along at the same pace. Is that true?
Exactly. And again, it goes back to, you think about a lot of people, they get frustrated because they have this big vision and this is where we're going. And why can't they get on board? Why aren't they? So we have a tool called Build the Bridge. And building the bridge means, well, you haven't given the detail for the guardian to make it logical. It seems illogical. So they're putting their foot on the brake. Or the nurturer, it's all about the relationships. People don't feel safe. So it means that I love this phrase, you have to slow down to speed up.
Yes.
Because if a train's engine gets disconnected from the rest, it won't matter. Yeah. Even though the engine got there, the train doesn't.
Yeah.
So you have to slow down, back up, readjoin, hook up, and then slowly start moving. And then, you'll never be at 100 miles an hour, but you might get to 60 or 70. And so now that's what you do as a leader. You have to slow down to speed up. But to do that, if it was me and you're listening to this and you have a team and you're making big decisions, I would learn the voices. I would have them learn the voices. And then what you do is you start to gather the other voices and create your own advisory panel. So you got a big decision you're going to make. Let's bring the nurturer in and the guardian in and the other voices in. Let's tell them, let's get their feedback. Why is this not going to work? How could this be communicated more effectively? And then when you go do the big reveal to everyone, bring them up on stage. Because when they see that Nancy's up there and she's excited about it, well, if Nancy believes in it, I'm in. And if the guardian gets up and Tom gets up and he starts sharing, okay, well, he answered all my logical questions. So, but what happens, a lot of founders, and I know because I am one, our CEO, they get up and they love to share the big vision and they have no idea that they've lost everyone. And when everyone starts folding their arms and looking at them, it's basically just meant that you missed the chance to connect to the things they care most about. And the 5 voices gives you the chance to understand that and effectively move people.
I know. Jeremie, this is great. We could go on for a long time, but I promise I would keep it to a certain time limit. But this is really, really, really helpful. And I think I think that the beauty of the 5 voices is the simplicity in one level and the depth of it in another level, right? So it does combine the two. And as I say, it's applicable, because it's applicable to people. And it's, at the end of the day, it's people who make up teams and make up organizations. So I really thank you for that. Before we wrap up, 2 questions I ask every guest on the podcast. Is a book other than, I know you've written a number of books, but other than your own, that has had an impact upon you?
Yeah, the book's called Heroic Leadership by Chris Lowney. And it's a really fascinating book. He talks about, and I'm not a Jesuit, but he talks about how the Jesuits changed the world over 450 years. And it is unbelievably profound. It's such a good book. And you realize how much influence they've had in China and all these different places around the world. And it gives you just a real, peace level about impact and how to make impact.
That's great. I love when I've never come across that before, heroic leadership. So that's one to add to the list. Second question is daily rituals. If you have them, if you're happy to share them, and what they do for you.
I do 3 things. I do at night. I call it my peace method. Okay. At night, I pick a theme over me. And the theme last night was no comparison. There's no comparison, no comparison. I then let my brain reorder my subconscious while I sleep over that theme. I then wake up in the morning and I do a call-up exercise. I look in the mirror for a second, like, hey, there you are, let's go. I go work out and I call myself up. I'm a freedom fighter. I'm a liberator. I help people. And I remind myself who I am and I get myself into my job and position because I have to be the healthiest person in the room to do what we do at Giant. And then the third thing I do is called the examine. Every day at 5:30, I look at my day and I look at what are the high fives for the day and kind of a gratefulness. Sometimes I'll text someone, hey, thanks for that great meeting. I then look and go, where was I off today? Was it me? And I start with me before I look at other people. I had a wrong attitude. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. What was that? And I analyze it and fix it if I can. And then I look at my calendar the next day and get prepared mentally and emotionally for those meetings. So my evenings are great. And so I keep short accounts. And I've been doing this for about a year. It's been a game changer for me because nothing builds up anymore.
That's fantastic. I love that. You created that yourself? You built that yourself?
I did because I needed it. I was trying to find solutions to help manage my emotions and manage my sometimes irrational thinking.
That's fantastic. I love that. I will come back and I will listen to that again just to kind of really, really dig into it. Jeremie, thank you so much for doing this. People listening, where can they reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah, if they want to find more information at giantworldwide.com, that's the best way to kind of find us and what we're doing, giantworldwide.com.
Great. Jeremie, thank you so much. Look forward to doing it again.
Thanks, John. Cheers.